Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to Disconnects in Energy Storage Systems, or ESS systems. Alrighty. So, who's here? DIY installer homeowners with ESS systems. If you could leave an answer in the chat, I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, how long have you been involved with energy storage systems as a DIY installer or as a homeowner? If you could leave an answer in the chat, we'd greatly appreciate it. And if you could leave an answer in the chat of what's your interest in this presentation, greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all those who've answered. So, as a warning, a little disclosure here. This is only my opinion and interpretation of the NEC code. So please consult or foster your local inspector or AHJ or the Department of Making You Sad for clarity before you begin any work to installing anything. I don't want you to have to undo work that you've already done once. So the scope of this article: energy storage system is a capacity over 1 kilowatt for standalone or interactive with any energy source. Part of what we got here is the ampere hours. Our other second note is distinction between battery storing energy and energy or UPS system, which will be covered in Article 480. So we're covering more of energy storage systems that are going to be cycled consistently, daily, weekly. A UPS center is more of a storage center that's designed to keep a computer bank or vital equipment up and running during a power outage. That's completely different from Article 706. Let's get a more definition and defined. This should only apply to energy storage systems. So like I just said before, we're looking for something that's going to be getting cycled daily or weekly. Included but not limited to batteries, capacity, kinetic energy devices such as flywheels, compressed air. I don't know how many of our installers here deal with anything like that, but I don't see that really being a thing. Informational note number 2, these systems differ from storage systems such as UPS centers. Alrighty, flow battery. Don't know really anybody that's really in flow batteries. It's more like a fuel cell at that point, is my understanding. So let's move on to the next slide. System requirements. So manufacturer trademark or something that identifies it to the manufacturer. If it's going to be an AC battery, rated frequency, number of phases. For AC or DC, you're going to want your kilowatt or kVA. Available fault current and maximum output and input current to your energy storage, as well as your maximum input and output voltage. Utility interactive capabilities as well. Your energy storage should be listed and have multiple systems installed in one structure. Disconnect means. Disconnect means a disconnect means shall be provided for all ungrounded conductors derived from an ESS and shall be permitted to be integral to the listed ESS equipment. So since I couldn't find a definition for ungrounded conductor in the NEC code, I went with a grounded conductor. A system or circuit conductor that is intentionally grounded. So a little bit of a difference here between grounded conductor and a reference to ground. Grounded conductor is something that's going to be mechanically bonded all your equipment into your ground wire conductor, either through a bolt, a screw, or a metallic plate. As you would see for a reference ground, for say you have a ground fault detection, you're going to have some kind of shunt or potentiometer that's going to pick that up, or a fuse that's going to be in between. So as that fuse, depending on what your potential ground fault could be, that fuse blows, and at that point, the ground fault is identified. So getting a little more defining on what's going to be required at this point. Direct current shall be grounded as provided for 250.162 A and B. So A is our real crucial that we want to look at here. They're going to be a 2-wire DC system supplying premise wiring and operating at greater than 60 volts, keyword greater than 60 volts here, and not greater than 300 volts shall be grounded. So if you have flooded batteries, you're going to have, say, your housing charge with 300. There's going to be a possibility that your local inspector is going to be requiring a disconnect at this point. My little tip here on the bottom, if you're using ground fault circuit breaker or ground fault detection device, you should have no bond between DC negative conductor and ground. This will bypass most ground fault detection devices. Disconnect means shall be readily accessible. So readily accessible, it's going to be visible. You don't have to be climbing over items. It's kind of hard when you have an installation in a customer's home and that energy storage room now becomes a storage room for all unwanted items the customer has. So you want to make sure you kind of have that area cleared. You don't want more heat being generated, dust being generated in that room. Just easy to work on and easy to access, because that can take time to clean things out and make a hazard if there is an arc fault that happens while maintaining equipment or servicing equipment or diagnosing problems. Don't want to be tripping over items trying to get out of there or trying to access a disconnect. Also, nowadays we requiring field markers for your ESS. Disconnect means shall be lockable in accordance with 110.25. Open and having it basically open in the open position, so that way we have no potential at this point. So servicing, there's no chance of someone getting electrocuted. Just to protect yourself, because I've had customers myself that decide to start pushing buttons while testing equipment or doing certain things, want to get power back on. So it's a good idea to be able to protect yourself while doing work. So one key thing in the code that I think is going to get a couple inspectors pushing this a lot harder is they're going to requiring for 1 family and 2 family dwellings, a disconnect means or its remote control shall be located at a readily accessible location outside the building. I've already had several customers with inspectors requiring having this going on, even though you're below the 60 volts at this point. Say if you're using an AGM or lithium battery with a max voltage of say 58 to 56, still the inspectors requiring to have that disconnect outside with a placard showing that it's a disconnect for energy storage. So this is a big thing I think is going to be start coming in 2022 and 2023 with inspectors not really having a real understanding between the 2 parts in the code there, and start pushing for disconnects on the outside. So I think this is something installers, even DIYers are going to have to start paying attention to, depending on your local codes and most of all, your local inspector. That's why I say foster a good relationship with your local inspector the best you can and go from there. So little definition for the lockable disconnect means: if the disconnect means is required to be lockable in the open elsewhere in this code, it shall be capable of being locked in the open position. This provision for locking shall remain in the place with or without the lock installed. So once you switch it to an open connection, it shouldn't have to have a locking device to keep it there by itself. It should stay there. It shouldn't be auto resetting of any form or anything like that. All right, remote actuation, where controls activate the disconnecting means of the ESS are used and are not located within sight of the system. The location of the control shall be field marked on the disconnect means. So if you're going to have that button or that switch outside of the two-family or single-family dwelling, there needs to be a field marking for that disconnect. Notification markers that are required for each ESS disconnect shall plainly indicate whether it is in the open, which is off position, or closed position, the on position, and be permanently marked energy storage system disconnect. The disconnect mean shall be legibly marked in the field to indicate the following: the normal ESS AC voltage and maximum ESS DC voltage, available fault current derived from the ESS, and arc flash label applied in accordance with the acceptable industry practices, and the date this calculation was performed. Just wait till the next slide now, if you could. Exceptions to the list here that we don't have to worry about is 2, 3, and 4. As an informational note, always take care of yourself. Wear the proper PPE for your work location and what you're going to be doing. That's pretty much up to the installer and the homeowner at that time. I always recommend wearing safety glasses. And try not to wear synthetic clothing. Any flash at that point with synthetic clothing, gonna be a very bad day. Cotton is your friend in this situation. Again, warning, this is my interpretation of the National Electrical Code. Like I said before, talk to your inspector, the local authority having jurisdiction, before you begin any work. Ask what they're looking for. Try to foster that relationship and go from there. That is all. I want to thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic day. Let's get on to answering some questions here. All righty, what do we got here? Oh, shit.
Yeah, feel free to type any questions you have into the Q&A chat box. Well, maybe everybody's crystal clear on everything. I don't see any questions coming in.
No, not at this point.
Well, we'll certainly leave it open for longer.
There we go. A couple come in here at this point.
Okay, did you see this one from Gail come in, Lewis?
Yeah, I just did. Gail, could you elaborate on your what you mean specifically? Disconnects have been installed already. Nope, go back to labeling requirements. All righty, let's do that then. Go back to labeling requirements here. Give me a moment. Fairly accessible. All righty. So in the labeling, what are you looking for in that question in the labeling?
Let's see. I can, Jim, let me go ahead and unmute you and you can ask the question instead of typing it. So I'm going to allow Jim, if you want to elaborate on that question, we'll be able to hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right. Yeah, just if you just hold it on the screen, I'd just like to write down those four requirements. There you go. That one there. So you said on this that it's only for 1 and 2 family dwellings, we only need number 1.
Correct. So let me go to the next page. So what's all exempt is question 2, 3, and 4 shall not apply to the family 1 or 2 family dwellings. So we go back. Pretty much the only thing they're really looking for is if it's a AC coupled energy storage. They want your nominal voltage for the AC, and if it's a DC coupled system, they're looking for the max voltage you're going to be reaching.
Thank you.
Nope, not a problem. Alrighty. What is it? 30.
Okay, Gail has elaborated on her question a little bit here in the Q&A chat. Looks like she might be looking for specific products that are listed.
Yeah, it's a good question because this part of the code, there's not really a lot of products out there for this install that I'm knowing that's really making this easy. That's why I'm trying to bring this up at the moment. And really trying to push with the kilovolt line of products to try to get something going for that at this time. And what we got here, Steve? Whoop. Alrighty. How can I answer? Got one question here from Jacob to answer live. How can we get that?
Okay.
Or we can just unmute Jacob here.
Oh, yes. Okay. You want to go to?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
So can you elaborate on your question there, Jacob, a little bit more, please?
Yeah, were you saying that there needs to be, so you know how there's usually a big PV disconnect and usually an AC disconnect for the grid connection outside. Are you saying that there will also need to be an ESS disconnect out there too?
Correct. That's way things are kind of going at this time, pushing towards at this point. That's why I'm saying
Okay.
some inspectors are requiring it, some are ignoring it. If you're right now with, say, flooded batteries, yes, you're required, but with right now with lithium and AGMs being below that 60 volts, theoretically, no. But there's also that part in the code that's requiring it for a disconnect to be external. So that comes into the interpretation of the local authority having jurisdiction or your inspector saying yes to it or no to it. It's all the interpretation of the inspector at that point.
Very interesting. And I think that there are some other questions in the chat too, just so you know.
Yep.
There are, yeah, we've got one from Steve. What is the NEC article number for the labeling requirements?
That's going to be in Article 760. Let me get that out of the way. So 706.15 disconnecting means. And that's gonna be back here in section C.
Okay, I'm gonna type that answer out so that's visible to everyone. Okay. Let's jump back to Gail. Gail's added a little bit more
Okay.
to their question. So a piece of equipment that survives a battery bank hot circuit break is very different from disconnecting when not under load. I'm not sure. I understand the question. Maybe we'll just unmute Gail.
Yep, let's go for that.
And let's get the question that way. Okay, Gail, I'm gonna unmute you so you can ask the question in as much detail as you want. Okay, go ahead, Gail.
It's showing on my end still muted.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Gail, I think you will have to unmute yourself, but you should be able to do that now. Down towards the bottom of your screen, probably on the left side, you'll have a little microphone icon. That should be all you need to click that to unmute yourself. If you don't see it at the bottom of the screen, it may actually be up along the top of your screen, but you're looking for a gray microphone icon. Well, perhaps we'll jump to another question and then give Gail some more time to get unmuted there. So why don't we go back to Jim? Jim has a further question. Can you elaborate on the grounding for over 60 DC volts?
Yep, so can we unmute Jim?
Sure, let's
Doing
do
live.
that now. Jim, you should be able to speak again.
Okay, yep.
Yep.
How are you doing, Jim?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah, pretty much everything we're doing seems to have been ungrounded for the last bunch of years here. So not really sure where, what do you mean by, are you saying just have an AC ground, an equipment ground to the
No,
disconnect?
this is on the DC side here. So theoretically, if you're over that 60 volts, then you're over 60 and under 300 for that energy storage, then one of your conductors is required to be bonded to ground. And that's going to be not need to disconnect that point. If you have both, if you're over that 60 volts and under that 300 volts and no reference or no bond to ground, then you're going to need to have a disconnect on your positive and negative conductor at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Who's our next one?
We've got a question from Matt. In the Q&A, if my battery system and inverter are located in a separate shed from the main single family house, are disconnects required for a 48 volt system?
Let's unmute Matt here and get a little more idea what he's got going on.
Okay. All right, Matt, you should be able to unmute and ask your question live.
You there, Matt? Because you're unmuted.
Could be microphone issue. Matt is
Okay.
unmuted.
Well, let me see if I can just try interpreting this as it's written out here. So if this where it comes a little tricky. If your whole energy storage system, say the inverter, charge controllers, the actual batteries, are on a building external from the residence. This includes your PV array. You only have, say, like an AC line going to the residential panel in the home. Don't see you're going to be needing to disconnect that point because it's not going to be within the home at that point for the 1 or 2 family homes. It's where the code's a little vague on, even though the system is supplying that home at that point. Theoretically, I don't see that. You would just need a disconnect in between, say, that's probably readily accessible. I can't point to where that would be in the code, or say your AC. That's what I'm saying. Talk to your local inspector at this point, and see what he'll actually approve. If you don't have an inspector coming to check on things, I really wouldn't worry about it. The systems nowadays, as long as you're installing a system with a AC/DC switch gear, proper size conductors, overcurrent protection, ground fault and arc fault protection, then you're gonna be well safe enough at that point. Monitor your system, quality work. You shouldn't have an issue at that point.
Not sure, Lewis, if you saw, there's a little bit of follow-up info there.
Yep.
The only thing going into the house for Matt's system is 220 AC.
Okay. All right. Yep, like I said there.
Okay. Oh, and one more note there, AC disconnect is at feed entrance to the house.
Yep, that's fine. Like I said, having a disconnect there. Should be all set. All right. Were we able to get back to Gail at this point?
No, and in fact, Gail was disconnected, it appears. So
Okay.
we'll have to leave that question alone, I guess.
Looks like George here. George, you got a question? It's been a while since I've heard from you. Can we unmute you by chance?
Sure, yeah, we can do that. All right. George is able to speak if you'd like.
Hey, Lewis, good presentation. Yeah, it's been
It's very short, but I'm hoping this is giving a few people some information they might need.
yeah,
Got
it was
any questions?
really good. You guys run a top-notch organization, and I'll continue to deal with altE as long as I can because Lewis actually came out to my place on a Saturday. Well, we got on the phone on a Saturday and spent about 7 hours working out a problem. So I appreciate that, Lewis, and
Oh, not a problem.
I still need to take you flying sometime.
Oh, I'm still waiting for that. My time on behind the stick. I'm still waiting.
Well, I wish this was live out on the East Coast. I would have came out.
Soon.
Yep.
Okay, but no, Garrett, I don't know if Garrett's involved with these programs at all, but between Garrett and all the support people, you guys are awesome. I love
Thank you.
dealing with you.
Thank you. All righty. All right. It looks like, did Gail come back? No. There we go.
No Gail, but we do have Matt's got another question, and it looks like he might be able to speak this one. So yeah, go ahead. You're unmuted, Matt. If you wanna ask your question, we can see if that mic's working.
I didn't even ask him a question and he called on me. That was funny.
Oh. Just one other question. Is there a DC amperage limitation? That's more the size of your system between the inverter and your energy storage at that point. What that disconnect needs to be rated at that time. That's more of just sizing and the design of the system at that point.